Hi, this is Mark Arnold, and welcome to another episode of Fun Ideas Podcast. And today I have a writer who's a big fan of the Beatles, Michael Jackson, and I'm sure some other music and other things. And it's Kit O'Toole. Thank you very much for being on the show. Yay!
Hi, Mark. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you. So how I usually start off, I just kind of say, tell me a little bit about yourself, and in your case, because you've become a writer, I guess how you became a Beatles fan and how you became a writer.
Well, gosh, I've been interested in writing like as long as I can remember. I mean, from when I was a kid, and I just it's just something that came very naturally to me. I was the editor of my school paper in high school. I was writing for in college. I wrote for a now defunct music paper. It was one of those ones that was free that you could pick up, that was like in, stands and music stores and, record stores, and I'll call it Showcase Chicago, where I got to interview local bands. And I've been a music fan for, also as long as I can remember. I was lucky, excuse me, enough to be raised in a house where my dad played drums, guitar, bass, and saxophone. And so if not professionally, but so if I wasn't listening to music being played on the stereo, he was playing it in the house, and listened to everything from jazz to rock to country. I mean, it was a bit of everything. So so I grew up with that. My first album, non-kiddie album I ever owned, was Stevie Wonder's Songs in the Key of Life. And that set me on my way. And I discovered, quotes, the Beatles when I was in 8th grade. This would have been like 1985. I'm a second generation fan. I had certainly heard of them before that point, and Dad played a bit of their music, but of course, I was in 8th grade. That wasn't cool to like stuff that parents liked. But somebody brought in a cassette of the 20 greatest hits, which was the pre-1 the collection. And I'll never forget it. It was in chorus class, and on Fridays we could bring in an album and play it for the class. Of course, I didn't know that was the chorus teacher just taking the day off. But it was, him saying, "Oh, we're all going to share our music, our favorite music with each other." And this student brought in the 20 Greatest Hits album, and 8 Days a Week came on. Mm-hmm. And I just was like, that I had never heard before. Mm-hmm. And I just like, what is that? It just sounded like nothing else that was on the radio at the time. And that piqued my interest. And so after that, I had to go and I got that album, and that started it, and so then I just got more and more interested, and and I just kept researching them and writing about them. And but I didn't intend for this to be my career, to write about music and everything. I mean, that was, I never thought I could do it. But then when, technology changed and blogging became a thing, and then, more sites came along where you could do online writing, self-publishing came along, that changed the whole game. And so now I'm getting to combine my hobby with my job. Mm-hmm. Doesn't get better than that.
Okay. Now, let's
Mark. Did you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. It's like it's a little grainy on the connection right at the moment. Now it looks okay. So.
Okay.
If I have
to cut, now you're good.
But I try to keep it light here.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, where I first heard about you, I didn't know who you are, was in Beatles fan. And I don't even remember what year you started, but if you became a Beatles fan in '85, it was probably after I started subscribing to it, which was around '83. So I just saw your name. I didn't know who you were. I just saw your name pop up, and you're pretty much not every issue, but pretty frequently. Is that correct?
Actually, I started writing for them in, I think it was like 95, 96, something like that. They were looking for a columnist to write about Beatles websites because in the mid 90s, they were just starting to pop up. I mean, this was like the new thing, and Bill King, editor-in-chief, he put out, I think it was in his probably letter from the publisher's column, and said, we're looking for somebody to cover Beatles websites because they were just, popping up everywhere at the time. And so I was probably I was just starting working on my doctorate at the time. And I thought, hey, this is something I could do in my spare time because I was, it was pretty heavy work I was doing. I was working on my English degree at the time, and I'm like, boy, I could use an outlet. It was so fun. It was pretty heavy stuff. So I thought, this could be really fun, and I'm just really getting into the internet now, and so maybe I'll try out for this. So I did. And to my delight, I got the gig, and I'm still doing it now.
Okay. Is that what you usually write about then? Is websites?
Now I've done other stuff too.
Okay, that's what I thought. It's like, but I don't really, there's so many names I know. Can't even rattle them all off. And so, but I just know I see your name. In fact, it's on the masthead, I think, all the time.
Yes.
So it's
it's in the masthead, and I've written about other stuff too. I've done big articles. I did one on the making of Help. I've done I've done a number of. I've done stuff on Paul. I've done a lot of music articles, and so. But I do my regular column is that, and I've been doing it ever since the mid '90s, and it's been really cool. Yeah, a long time, and it's been really cool because I've seen. I've gotten a front row seat to the growth of the internet doing this. I mean, when I first started, I mean, the sites were really like all text, really primitive. Steve Marinucci's first site at the Abbey Road page was, that was like the biggest site when I first started. And, and then when George Harrison really updated his page and, for the All Things Must Pass remastering, the first one in 2000, that was a big deal because he really used some impressive animation and everything on his site, which today may not seem like a big deal, but in 2000 it was really a leap forward. So it's really been cool to watch all this and chronicle it in my columns. So yep, I've been with them a long time.
Now, who had of the Beatles? I don't even remember, and if I looked it up, obviously didn't. But which of the Beatles had a website first?
That's a really good question.
Oh, you don't know. You might remember.
and I don't remember precisely which one, but I can tell you that probably Ringo was the first one who really made good use of it. Because he would put up a lot of videos, like where he would speak to the fans. He, in my opinion, he was really the first one that got the power of the internet. As he was doing that a lot, and none of the, Paul wasn't doing that. John's estate wasn't doing anything like that. George. Now, as I said, in 2000. George finally got with the program and started with the animation to promote All Things Must Pass. But Ringo really caught on early that, hey, I can really do some publicity with the net. Maybe I should put up these little short videos where I talk directly to the camera. And again, today, it's no big deal. But in the late 90s, that was pretty forward thinking for him.
And if I remember correctly, I think he and maybe even a couple of the others had sites prior to an actual official Beatles site. Like, I don't think there was an official Beatles site until Anthology, or it might have even been later than that, if I remember correctly.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, there may have been, I'm trying to remember if there was one before, even like Anthology. And if there was, it wasn't much. I mean, it's, yeah. I mean, as I said, I think for a long time, and John Lennon's site was terrible for a long time. I mean, it really was. I mean, it was
Sorry,
basic. I mean, yeah, and I'm sorry to say, and it was kind of surprising because you would think Yoko would be on board with that, with the new technology, but it was just really boring, really basic, and I just thought, wow, don't they see the potential? But I mean, in a way, they were drag kicking and screaming into streaming media. I mean, look at that.
I mean,
so
I remember this. I think a lot of people didn't know how to deal with it. I remember when Weird Al, he had a website by this point. Yes. And then everybody convinced him to get a MySpace page that shows you how long ago this was. And he wrote something. He says, well, I have a MySpace page now because you know what I like is redundancy. And it's like, thinking back on it, it's like, yeah, that, I agreed with him at the time, but now it's like people do it all the time. They have a website. Like, I'm sure that's why I asked is, I think the solo site started before the Beatles site because probably they thought we don't need a group site. We're already famous, and we're not really putting out new material, as it were. And,
exactly.
It's like, well, Capital is taking care of that, or Parlophone, or whichever country you're in. We don't have to worry about this. And then they said, maybe we should take care of this.
Exactly. And I'll tell you, for all the years I've been doing this, I mean, there have been fans, particularly in the earlier years, that have done better websites than the official ones. I mean, there have been some really impressive sites that fans have put together, and about like very specific subjects, one about like the Beatles finances. I mean, there's one like that, and, but I mean, really interesting stuff. And others dedicated to, labels, label variations from different countries and, things like that. And, stuff that the main, the official Beatles site, wouldn't touch it. And some of it was disappointing because like I noticed some of the descriptions on the Beatles site, they just take from Wikipedia. And I just think, what? I mean, again, I've seen some better stuff on, more care taken from on fan sites. So it's just been really, interesting to see the growth of that, and to see that Apple and the individual soul Beatles and their estates and so forth have thought, okay, we can't deny this anymore. We have to have a better web presence. So yeah, it's been a fascinating, job to have all these years.
Now, is it easier to find websites now or then?
I would say that now because, I think it's kind of reached a plateau in a way, because there are so many and there aren't as many new ones popping up as much as there were, but in the last, I don't know, certainly in the 90s, and then through the maybe like to 2010 or so, I mean, it was just like this. I mean, it was like I was just finding sites like crazy on every kind of topic. And but of course the downside is too, though, they disappear, so I always had to put in my column, as of this writing, this is where, but, and of course, a lot of them disappear, but it was really, amazing for a time that, they just were exploding. Particularly what made the difference was when more of these free, website companies like GeoCities and all these, remember those? When those started popping up, I mean, the sites just exploded. I mean, and people started developing their own sites when it became more affordable. I mean, sky was the limit
Mhm.
on these sites.
Now we can move on, but my last question is currently,
Sure.
what do you think is the best Beatles related site?
Oh gosh, I love the Beatles Bible. I love that site. I
Very good.
use it a lot. I love that I mean, it's constantly growing. I mean, it's still developing material, but I mean, for reference, everything. I mean, it just you can't beat it. And if they do have any errors in there, they usually fix them pretty quickly. And I just think for reference and everything, it's the best out there.
Mhm. Shifting gears a little bit, but it's obviously still about writing. But I was doing a little research about you before we started talking. You've written two books, and one of them isn't about the Beatles, and one of them is. But so we got Michael Jackson FAQ, and then songs we're singing. So if you could introduce them, and then I'll ask some questions about those.
Sure, absolutely. Well, songs we were singing, Guided Tours to the Beatles, lesser known tracks is the first one, which is a collection of columns that I've written about Beatles from about, I'd say like 2009, 2008, 2009, until about 2015. And many of those cannot be found on the web anymore because the sites, some of the sites that I wrote them for are no longer exist, or they've changed hands, and that's the way the internet goes. So so a lot of them are no longer available online, so you can only find them in the book. And some of them are columns that I've written that are called they're part of a series called Deep Beatles, where I write about songs that I feel are often overlooked. They're not the big hits. They're B-sides, maybe songs the Beatles never performed live, they're album tracks, things like that, that you just don't hear discussed as much. And I think they're just as important as the main hits. And so in this book, I talk about, how they were written, how they were recorded, and why they're important, how they fit into the Beatles canon. And I kind of tie them into, how this was a predecessor to Hard Day's Night, or Hey Jude, or like a bigger hit. So that's that book. And then the other book is Michael Jackson FAQ, All That's Left to Know About the King of Pop. And it is not a biography. It's more about his music, his artistry, and it ranges from the Jackson 5 up to his death. And it's really, kind of goes all over the place in different chapters. Like, for instance, I have a chapter of, people have debated for years, Off the Wall versus Thriller, which is better. So I kind of frame it like that. To like, okay, round one, and I have it like, I go music, like in terms of the arrangements, and then, round two, lyrics. I mean, I do it in more of a non-traditional kind of way, because I want to spark conversation with fans. Talk about how his influences musically and even in dance, his legacy in terms of music video. So it's I make a big point of saying, if you're looking for like a straightforward biography, this is not the book for you. this is really about his music and his artistry. So those are the two books.
Okay. A lot of those FAQ books, I have a few of them. I don't have that one, but I have like Monty Python. I have Morrissey, because the previous podcast guest had written Morrissey FAQ. And I have the Beatles ones, at least two of them. I think there's a group one and then a solo one and something like that. There might be a third one, So I know they're kind of like, for lack of a better term, episodic. They don't really, they're just like topic. It's not like a continuity per se in most of those type of books. So I mean,
you could pick this up, like, you could pick it up and go to any topic that interests you and just read that. They're like, self-contained kind of chapters. Exactly.
Now, on that, now I'm kind of curious about that. Then I should probably pick up the book. You said Off the Wall versus Thriller. Do you give your own opinion, or do you just present the facts and let the reader choose for themselves?
You know what, I do that because one of the things I really wanted to do, because as whether you're a Beatles fan, whether you're a Monkees fan, whether you're, whatever, part of the fun of being a fan are those kind of debates.
Right.
I think, I mean, those are just fun. First time I went to a Fest for Beatles fans convention, I just thought, wow, this is a place where you can debate, which version of While My Guitar Gently Weeps is better. This is like Nirvana. This is great. And, that's what's fun about being a fan. And so I debated whether to offer my opinion or not. But I then thought in the end, you know what? This book should be a launching point for discussion. Now, what I do in the book is I have what I call ultimate playlists, where I thought about, I'm like, okay, if I were introducing Michael Jackson's music to somebody who had never heard it before, what would I do? Like, what kind of playlist would I give? So I do that. But I invite in the introduction, I say, I know that you, dear reader, are going to say, how could you possibly forget,
Right.
XYZ? Good. I want you to do that. Use this as a starting point for discussion with fellow fans. Go ahead and say, how could she possibly, forget this song? And good. I want you to do that. So I decided not to offer my opinion there, because I thought, I want readers to use this as a launching point for discussion.
I mean, for me, I will give my opinion about it. So
Sure.
you don't have. I've said for years, I think off the Wall in a certain respect is a more ambitious project because he wasn't trying to top himself per se. But it's really hard to ignore Thriller as far as how overhyped it, because I'm a huge McCartney Beatles fan, of course, and I'm a huge Vincent Price fan, and horror movie fan. So it's like there's a lot to like on Thriller. For me, it's and then covering Michael Jackson's career. The first I don't know if you had this experience. My first exposure to him was the cutout records in the back of the cereal box, and the Saturday morning cartoon. So I have a fondness for that early stuff. Belatedly, I discovered the Jacksons, not the Jackson 5 per se, but the Jacksons after they moved to Epic. And I said, there's some darn good stuff on there. I think Victory is a little overblown, but that's post-Thriller as everything else post-Thriller. There's that need to top something. But beyond that, it's like the album that I kind of wish they put out separately and kind of re-promoted is the new tracks on History, because they never put that out separately as a new album. They put the greatest hits as a separate album, but it's like, let the album stand on its own. Like I think they should reissue it and give it a different name, like to say, the Scream album, History Sessions, or something to that, to say it's the same album, but we're going to promote it on its own, because there's some fantastic stuff on that. And I thought that in a certain way was a little bit of a peak for him that, wasn't the same type of peak where everything was hitting number one just automatically just because it's Michael Jackson and it was a new record. He had to try a little bit harder. And there's some controversial stuff on that, unknowing.
Absolutely.
But I like that album. Anyway, so that's my 2 cents.
No, that's great. And in fact, when we're finished, you'll have to send me your address, because I'll hook you up with my books, and you'll really like my Michael Jackson book, because I talk about some of that stuff. That first of all, I agree with you on the Jacksons. I think that period is overlooked, and I do talk about that quite a bit. There's some great stuff, great albums. Victory was not one of their better ones. But before that, yeah, Triumph is a great album, and the first album they did with Gamble and Huff of Philadelphia International producing, that's a lost gem. Yeah, I mean they did some great stuff. And as far as what you're saying about the history album, I agree. Like Stranger in Moscow, I think that's an incredible song. I love that song, and Scream itself. That's a great. I mean, yeah, there's some great songs on that, and yeah, I think I agree with you. If you release that as a separate album, like just totally aside from the history project, yeah, I agree with you. I think it does stand on its own. There's some really great Earth Song. That's a great one. Yeah, love the arrangement on that. So yeah, and so that's the kind of stuff that my book talks about, and sparks discussions like that. So
and that album was the one that made me a fan. I was always a fan, but sometimes, and it's just the way Michael Jackson was, I have to admit. Sometimes you just get on my nerves.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the, accusations, we'll leave it at that. It was more to do with just choices he made in general, of dress or, attitude or, just things he did in general. It's like, just you're just like rolling your eyes. And it's like, I think one of the unfortunate thing he had to pass away probably for this to happen is you can have kind of revisionist thinking, because now you can just appreciate the music for what it is rather than look at all the hypercritical elements of his life. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say, yeah, that's really what researching this book enabled me to do. And the way I got this, I was approached to do this was when he died. I wrote an article for I was working for a blog, a site called Blog Critics at the time, and I wrote an article about him after he passed, an appreciation kind of article, and I talked about how when he debuted the Moonwalk on Motown 25 in 83. I said for my generation, particularly, that was like our Beatles and Ed Sullivan moment. I mean, because I remember like everybody watched that. And the next day, absolutely. Everybody watched it. And the next day, my friends and I was in 6th grade. My friends and I were on the playground trying to figure out how he did it. And I mean, I remember that distinctly, and everybody talked about it. And so like, that's as close to the Beatles and Ed Sullivan as like my generation got.
Right.
And, and I talk about that in the book as well. And, and I wrote about that, and, and I said, talked about how, he had a massive impact on our culture for sure. I mean, musically, and in dance and so forth. And so then Robert Rodriguez, who's the author of the Beatles FAQ books you mentioned, contacted me and said, hey, Backbeat Publishing is looking for an FAQ on Michael Jackson, and I think you should send a proposal for it. And because he had read that article. And so that's, long story short, that's how it happened. And the only way I agreed to do it was I said, I do not want to get into the Seymour stuff. I'm not interested. I don't want to get sued. I don't want to, I don't want any problems, because what I'm interested in is, really looking into his impact on music, on culture, on fashion, on all that kind of stuff. Because we've heard about the other stuff, ad infinitum. Let's talk about the other stuff. And they said, fine, So that's how it came about. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad they were willing to listen. It's like 10 most scandalous things Michael Jackson did. It's like, oh, do I have to talk about that?
Exactly. I'm like, I'm not doing it. If you're that's what you're looking for, move on. And when I started doing interviews for that book, when it first came out, I made that crystal clear to people when they were interviewing me too. And there were one or two interviewers who tried. And I'm like, I'm not talking about it. I'm not doing, and I don't know anything. I mean, I
Yeah.
have nothing to add. I
Yeah.
mean, but it was really, really interesting to do that book, because it did give me even more appreciation for how much, he accomplished. I mean, even like with the Jackson 5, I mean, they were really the first, you know, Black teen idols that really made it big. I mean, I don't think people appreciate that. Like even that cartoon that you
Yeah.
talked about.
Yeah.
I mean, I read so many, people have said like that African American youth said that meant so much to them to
Yeah.
have them represented in cartoon form. That had like never happened.
Right.
And to have them reach that level of superstardom, I mean, almost in their prime, and when they were touring, I mean, it was like Beatlemania, for a while. And so, I mean, they really broke a lot of barriers. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that's remembered as much today. And I tried to, really point that out in my book, and, things like that, that, I think really need to be remembered.
Yeah. And I just always admired Michael's ability to just, he could fall out of favor for a while and then do something else to bring him back to the top.
Yep.
And what was, I hate to say it, I should remember all these album numbers. What was the last album that came out in his lifetime? Invincible? Is that
Invincible, yeah.
And I used to say when he was getting in trouble and stuff like that, just record another album. It'll fix all of his issues and problems. And finally, he put that one out. I didn't think it was as strong of an album, but at least he finally did go back to the music, and going back to a Beatles connection, it's the same thing I used to think about Ringo. It's like there were years when he didn't put out anything. Of course, now he's like put out so many albums. It's like, okay, stop already. No, that's great. But for years it's like he didn't put out anything, and of course he had his own demons and everything. And it's like, just get back to the music, go back on the road, because I became a Beatle fan around 77. And so Ringo was already on the downslide.
Yeah, that was not
Paul
a good
was
period.
hot, George was kind of mediocre, not too, he got bigger again later, I think, with Wilburys and things like that. But, but he wasn't nosediving. He did his disastrous Dark Horse tour. And for me, Lennon was just like, not there, and then when he came back, I was like, ooh, and then unfortunately, anyway, it was just Ringo. I was always kind of pulled for him because, like, one of the first things he did when I became a fan was that TV special, which I kind of equate to like the Star Wars holiday special in like quality and quantity or something, and it's. Why did you do that?
Yeah, although when you watch it now, and it's on YouTube, you can watch it now. In a way, when you look at it now, yeah, it's bad. It is, no way around it. But it's kind of charming when you watch it now, though, because it's like that 70s, variety show kind of thing where, like, these just aren't made anymore. Like, like the guests, like, Art Carney, John Ritter, Angie Dickinson, and like, all these different guests. Like, you just, you don't see that anymore. Yeah. they don't make them like that anymore. So, I mean, like, I co-host, Videocast, Talk More Talk, Soul Beatles Videocast, and we covered that. We went back and covered that show on an episode. So I went back and, watched it because I hadn't, seen it. I didn't see it when it originally aired. I was a little young for that, but I went back and watched it, and as I said, I thought, this is pretty bad. But as I said, but it was kind of like a charming bad in a way, because you're just like, oh man, this takes me back to a time when there were these like kind of specials in the 70s.
And I think that was just the 70s. I mean, if you look at, it's like you could have released Ringo with the title, "If you thought James Paul McCartney was bad, watch this." But they did stuff like that. It's like even Lennon's like appearance on the Sir Lou Grade in the mid 70s kind of gets in that kind of weird kitschy type territory, and it was just what the 70s were all about, I guess.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing. And you know, that there's just, yeah, these, you know, these younger kids today, they don't appreciate, you know, what it was like in the 70s. It really, I mean, that's well, and even I went back and revisited that when I was working on that Michael Jackson book, because the Jackson 5, they did the rounds of those shows.
Yeah.
And some of them were pretty cringy.
I'll tell you straight up, I am a huge, huge, huge fan of variety shows.
Mm-hmm. Oh, they were fun.
Yeah, anytime they put a compilation out, like I think the most recent one I got is a 5-disc set of Cher, her mid-70s show between the two Sonny and Cher shows, and it's like some of the guests were like shocking, you know, like they do. I think this is on there if I remember correctly, and I remember seeing this as a kid, didn't think about it till it's Cher. Who's she singing with? Tina Turner and Kate Smith doing a Beatles medley.
I've seen that online.
I'm like, oh my
God. Yep. I mean, you just, as I said, you just don't see that anymore.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, you couldn't even pay somebody to do that now. I mean, it's like, imagine it would be like Lady Gaga Olivia Newton-John with who's an older singer, Tony Bennett, let's say, just for the sake of argument.
Exactly.
You know, it's like singing, you know, songs by the Monkees or something. You know,
yeah,
like, they wouldn't do that. You know,
like your brain just explodes.
Yeah. But in the 70s, that was not a problem, and it's like,
no, this was totally normal stuff.
No. So it's fun to grab those things, and then you say, no, that did never happen. Yeah, it did. You know?
That did, and we have proof.
Yeah. You know, the funny thing about you know, one more thing about the Ringo special is that I'm sure you've seen enough that you know the story, basically, right? Okay,
yeah.
so
yep.
The scene where he's supposedly mobbed by fans, or Ringo's mobbed by fans, apparently they had to like pay people to mob him. It was no longer Beatlemania, and I said, how sad, you know, because I was about 10 years old then, you know, and so, you know, I thought these guys still need to be as famous as they were when they were the Beatles, and it's like when you hear it's like, oh, he's not. You know?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, there's some outtakes that you can watch on
Well, I don't know
YouTube.
if I've seen those.
Oh yeah, there's some outtakes, and Ringo was in a not good place back then. I mean, yeah, I mean he was not in a good mood in some of those takes. Yeah, I mean it was pretty cringy, and so yeah, I mean you can just tell like this was, you know, he was in his partying, drinking days, and you know, you just thought, oh boy, I think there were some days where he did not want to be there, and you know, so I mean, but that's, you know, that was the time, you know, and thank God then he got cleaned up in the 80s, and then, you know, then he had a resurgence, thank goodness. You know,
he's around in his 80s, which is amazing to me.
He's still putting out fabulous new music. Yes. And he looks great. I mean, he looks fabulous. Who would have thunk it? Exactly. I saw him in concert. I'm trying to remember if it was like 2018, something like that. The All-Star Band. He's doing jumping jacks on stage, and I'm just like, what? How does this guy do it? I don't get it.
He has a picture of Dorian Gray in his attic, I think.
Yeah. So, that must be it.
Yeah. But the other funny thing, those outtakes, even though I haven't seen them, it just reminds me, if you have the extended version of Keith Moon's Two Sides of the Moon CD, you know, they have outtakes of Ringo and Keith doing Together, or Harry Nilsson's song, and they're just ad-libbing in the studio saying silly jokes that are probably worse than Going to Buy Me a Dog by the Monkees. And you can tell it's like they're just like struggling and straining to kind of get through it in a certain respect, you know, because I'm sure they were drinking a few or something else, you know, during the sessions, I'm sure. You know?
Oh man. Oh yeah, it can be kind of painful to watch. That's for sure. Oh man.
So you mentioned Monkees. What other things are you a fan of musically or not musically even?
Oh gosh, well, I am a big fan of soul and R&B. I absolutely love it. I kind of grew. I don't know if it's partially because I'm born and raised in the Chicago area, and that's kind of a big thing here. But and again, the influence of my father. He is like James Brown's #1 fan, and so he loves James Brown, and I love him too. And so, I grew up, I mean, I watched Soul Train, I listened to soul music. I mean, it's just one of my other passions. And in fact, I've taught, um, well, it's going to be my third course in January. I teach online courses for Monmouth University. Um, and uh, in New Jersey, and I teach thank, thanks to Ken Wall. He program there, their arts introduction to Motown and or history of Motown, I should say. And then this January, I'm going to be teaching the music of Stevie Wonder, which is like my dream come true. And there are 3 course sessions, and it's my passion. I've written about soul extensively. I'm hoping in the future to put out another book, in fact, with a collection. Yep, with a collection of writing about soul that I've done over the years online, and it's my other passion besides the Beatles. So that's one of them. I don't have as extensive a collection in it, but as I said, jazz, since I've been raised in that, so I listen to that. I'm pretty open to all different kinds of music. I've really tried to, remain pretty open-minded. I mean, I was even, because I was, time I was born in. I mean, I've even listened to, some hip hop, because I came of age when hip hop, really started entering the mainstream. Now I like old school, like 80s hip hop. I mean, once it got into gangsta, I was like, yeah, I'm not really.
I'm very similar on that. I used to say I can't stand rap, but it really boils down to I like rap if it makes me laugh. And a lot of this stuff is a little too hardcore, and it's like, but like things like Run DMC or even the Beastie Boys or Sugar Hill Gang or any of that earlier stuff. There's a sense of humor about it, and I think for me at least that falls in line with my musical tastes. Like if the Beatles were kind of drab personalities, I don't know if I would like them as much musically. But they had a sense of humor. It came across, of course, on things like the Christmas albums and some of the movies, and even B-sides or something like that. But and just the way they quipped in press conferences and things like that. So that endeared me to them. Same thing with Monkeys. It's been harder for me to be like a fan of, say, like, and I am a fan, but not as in the same way as, like, say, Fleetwood Mac. I find them personally probably kind of dull, but some of the music's okay. But I mean, that's an example. It's like for me, you have to have, like, I'm not a big fan of Bruce Springsteen for that same type of reason. I appreciate that, musically he might be good. It's like, hey, it has some tunes I actually like, but the only song that really piqued my interest, and they played around this time of year, is his version of Santa Claus is Coming to Town, because there's one chance you get to hear Bruce Springsteen kind of, lose it for a second when Santa's going, ho, 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 and he kind of cracks up. And it's like, finally, it's quit being such a serious drip.
That's the thing. You know what? I mean, I saw Bruce Springsteen once in concert, and a friend of mine had an extra ticket, and I thought, you know what? I've heard over and over again, you've got to see him live. So I'm like, okay, all right, I'll give it a shot, and yeah, I mean, I like some of the songs, but I've just never been like a huge fan. I've just never really, connected to him on a level that a lot of his fans have. And so I went to the concert. I'll give him credit. He played like 3 hours, like Paul McCartney does. He played 3 hours. His band, and I think Clarence Clemens was still alive when I saw it. The band was awesome. I mean, the E Street Band, no question, they are fantastic. I mean, I will give them all the credit in the world. Unfortunately, he decided that night to play all this obscure stuff. Oh. And now, if you're a hardcore fan, you were probably in heaven, know. But with me, I mean, he finally got to Hungry Heart, and I was like, okay, I'm finally a song, something I know, but I mean, I admire him for his passion and I mean, he really, he has passion for what he does and but I've just never really connected to him, but good on him.
Yeah. Another one I never really connected, and if you're a fan, that's okay. I'm more of a fan than I used to be, but there's other reasons why I became more of a fan. Is Bob Dylan. Things, I always found him kind of dry, and he can't sing. I've said comments like this. He's very similar to Yoko Ono, and people go, "What?" And I say, "Yeah, excellent song composer, lousy singer."
I like when other people do his songs. Great songwriter, no question. Great, I wrote a chapter. Ken Womack edited a book, academic book about the Beatles, and he asked me to write a chapter about how the Beatles and Dylan influenced each other. And that actually gave me a lot more appreciation into Bob Dylan as a writer and a poet. Now, absolutely, I totally agree with him. He is just an incredibly skilled songwriter, but I just cannot get past his voice. I'm really sorry. I know, as you said, people are going to be listening to this who are Dylan diehards, and I just, I cannot get past his voice.
Now, I have a friend of mine, which I'll leave him out of the discussion, but just what he said. He says, "Well, if the Beatles love Bob Dylan, you should love Bob Dylan." And my response was, "Well, the Beatles love to smoke." I don't have to like everything the Beatles like just because they like him. So
exactly.
I will say this: what sparked the thought was when you said Springsteen and you played everything but something you knew. So I finally did see Bob Dylan about 2 years ago. No, it was
really?
About 5 years ago. And I was warned about this, is that he doesn't like doing his big hits anymore. So it's like. So the only song he did that was remotely known, fortunately I had listened to his current albums to kind of familiarize myself with everything, was, what was the song? Tangled Up in Blue from the mid-70s.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I mean, if you're looking for like a Rolling Stone or Rainy Day Women or, what are all the ones? Mr. Tambourine Man, anything, it's on all the years. When the Eskimo, you're out of luck. You won't get anything from the 60s, forget it. Now, I kind of became more of a fan prior to that when they did the Wilburys thing. Although I do admit, when the Wilburys got together, I was saying, all right, Tom Petty, I'm okay. Jeff Lynne, of course.
Yeah.
Roy Orbison, I like him.
Yep.
Bob, no. It's like, can't we leave him out? Anyway, but
actually it worked.
It worked.
I didn't, because if it had been just him, but since it was all of them together, it was okay.
Now, what actually made me more of a Dylan fan, and I don't know if you've seen it, or the documentary that Martin Scorsese did, because it kind of
I haven't seen that yet.
I would recommend it, not to become a fan necessarily, but it helped me to understand the influence of Bob Dylan, kind of like how you were trying to get people to understand the influence of Michael Jackson. It's kind of like, okay, I get it. And it's interesting because I've heard of things in the past, like when Bob Dylan went electric and stuff like that, he was booed off the stage. There's actual footage of that. I didn't know that. So it's like they're showing the actual concert where they're booing him. It's kind of funny. And I assume you saw the Scorsese documentary about George Harrison. So it's the same level as
Yes.
that. So
Yeah.
that's why I
Wow.
gave it a chance. So, and Scorsese also did a good documentary on the Rolling Stones called Shine a Light. And of course, he did The Last Waltz years ago that has Ringo
Right.
in the band, you know. And so,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
yeah, I'll give Scorsese his due when he does documentaries, and but I like most of his straight films too, that are just, you know, regular films,
Well, of
film
course.
films. You know?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, he
Yeah.
does good documentaries. So I highly
Yeah.
recommend the Bob Dylan one, even if you're not a Bob Dylan fan, because, like I said, they explain his influence. They interview colleagues. They have a lot of good footage. You know, they show clips of like Woody Guthrie and Joan Baez and associates and things like that. So it was a good.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'll definitely. Yeah, I've been meaning to check it out because I've seen, you know, I've seen it on, I forget if it's on Netflix or Hulu or, you know, and I've seen it on there, and I'm like, I really should see this, and I have it in my list, and yeah, because and as I said, when I did the research on that chapter that I wrote, I thought, you know, I have to give him his due, and you know, I mean, as a songwriter, he's really, you know, one of a kind, and he did absolutely have a huge influence on the Beatles, no question about it. I mean, he did, and a ton of other musicians.
Right, but you know, I have to admit though, you know, that I never understood the significance so much in the past. Like when I got the Concert for Bangladesh album originally, before I even saw the film.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know that Bob Dylan had made a concert appearance in like 5 years or something. I didn't know that he was so revered even then, you know. So it's like, so my mind was a whole album side devoted to Bob Dylan. Why can't we have 5 more George songs? You know? Get that guy off of here. But
get that guy.
You know, or at least sing one song. I mean, that was what it was. It was the whole side. It's like, you know, it's like, wow, you know, I like Robbie's side better.
Yeah.
Even on Robbie's side, there's a sense of humor. That's what, you know, I said, humor goes a long way. Oh, if you like the tuning, you'll appreciate the music even more. You know?
Yeah, that was so funny.
You
oh,
know,
that was hilarious. Oh my God.
And you know, I've developed an appreciation for him, and it's like, you know, in listening to interviews and stuff like that, George even said that about Ravi. He says, you know, Ravi, he had an excellent sense of humor, and it's like, you know, you'd never think about it. And then, you know, I think he talked about that one time it was George himself and Ravi and Peter Sellers. I forgot if it was Disneyland or Walt Disney World, but they were in the teacups, you know, going around together. I go, wow, what a sight that would have been. You know, there's an odd combination, you know. So.
No kidding. But actually that leads me, you know, talking about Ravi Shankar, you know, that's one of the great things about being a Beatles fan is that, you know, they really introduced me, and also talking about liking different kinds of music. I mean, they really introduced me to music that I probably never would have listened to if
Right.
you know, and there's a perfect example is, you know, Ravi Shankar and Indian music in general. I mean, I'm not saying like I'm a, you know, a huge fan, like I don't listen to it all the time, but boy, did I learn to appreciate it, and you know, and it's fascinating to me. And you know, so I mean, they introduced me to that. You know, they introduced me to, you know, some of the avant-garde. They, you know, introduced me, of course, to you know, a lot of really obscure American R&B artists that you know, Arthur Alexander and you know, Larry Williams and all that, never would have heard of if I hadn't listened to them. And they're, you know, particularly Arthur Alexander was, you know, was terrific. And so that's another great thing about being a Beatles fan is that, you know, you listen to the Beatles and then you end up discovering all these other great, you know, artists, different kinds of music that, you know, you probably wouldn't have heard if otherwise. So so yeah, I really you know, much as I love the Beatles, I you know, do love to, you know, try to listen to all different kinds, and I try to listen to today's music too, because I don't like to, I try not to be, oh, today's music all stinks and, so I try not to be, that person. And I'm not saying, there isn't a ton of today's stuff that I'm like that into, but I try to keep up. And although I do listen to like Bruno Mars, because he's definitely kind of continuing Michael Jackson kind of stuff. He's great. Some of the Weekend stuff I like, not all of it, but some of it. I like some of that. So I mean, there are some artists out there that that I like, but so I try to keep up.
It is harder though to keep up, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not crazy. Okay, because it's like back in the day, you have the top 40 station that would play anything and everything, so you'd get a little smattering of everything. And now it's like, if you want the variety, you don't get it, and so it's a lot of for lack of a better term, just American Idol winners,
Yep.
basically, or dance pop bands, that don't play instruments, which is really kind of a oddball switch from the way it had been for so long, that everybody had to play their own instruments and write their own songs and doesn't really happen anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that'll ever change, but and then I always wonder, is the music today even good when sometimes, I work a regular job too, and some of the 20-something-year-olds are playing the radio in the other room, and they're playing the old rock and roll stuff from the 50s, or not the 50s so much, the 60s and 70s. And it's like,
sure.
Don't you like the current stuff? And this old stuff is like ancient, No, I love this, David Bowie and whatever, that's like, wow, because I mean, we grew up with it. For them, it's like this is a long dead composer, as it were, like Mozart or something. I hate to say.
No, well, like today, I was listening. I downloaded this the new album talking about Bruno Mars by Silk Sonic, which is Bruno Mars and Anderson .Paak, and it's this sort of 70s soul band kind of sort of side project they put together, and it's a lot of fun. It's a great album called An Evening with Soul Sonic. Bootsy Collins plays on it, and it's very Philadelphia soul influenced and all. And at one point, as I've been listening to it, I'm like, wait a minute, are those real drums on there? And Anderson .Paak plays drums, and I'm like, my God, I'm trying to remember the last time I heard a real drum on a pop record. Oh, is that great to hear? And I mean, it does seem like, that is a complaint I have, and maybe that explains why your coworkers are listening to 60s and 70s stuff and all, because they're real instruments. And and today you tend to hear a lot of computer. It's stuff, it's Pro Tools, and I'm sorry, there's nothing that replaces real instruments. There just isn't.
The way they used to record things were typically, especially the further back you go, is everybody's in the same room and you try to do it all in one take without too many overdubs and all sorts of things. Certainly no auto-tune, things like that.
Exactly.
And then when current artists do dabble in it, it always sounds kind of awkward and weird. It's like,
exactly.
You really need to do it. I mean, it's like, you won American Idol, you can sing, right? Or whatever.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing, and and American Idol and The Voice, I mean, they're fine for entertainment and everything, but one thing that bothers me though is a lot of times the singers that get awarded and everything, they're the ones that are the vocal acrobatic kind of singers, and those are not always the singers that are the most effective. I mean, yes, that's impressive that you've got that kind of range and everything, but a lot of times some of the best singers that we've had don't engage in vocal acrobatics. I mean, I'm sure, and I know it's been said before that some of the singers, I mean, Bob Dylan would have ever gotten past. I mean, can you imagine if he had auditioned? I mean,
Oh, the times they are next.
yeah, exactly.
But
Yeah, Neil Young. I mean, Neil Young wouldn't have gotten, and I think he's an incredible singer. I mean, and because the kind of stuff he does, his voice is really effective for it. I mean, I think he has a lot of emotion and all, but is it technically a great voice? Well, I mean,
yeah.
I mean, so I mean that's the thing. Well, and you notice that with few exceptions, I mean, a lot of these singers win, like particularly the voice, and then you never hear from them again.
Right.
I mean, it's I mean that's the thing. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's I think real talent is different. And I mean, as I said, I'm not saying the people that are singing don't have any talent, but I just think it's a different kind of talent. I mean, that's great that you've got this huge range, you can hit the whistle notes and everything, but there's more to it than that. Yeah.
Just remind me. Years ago, my sister bought me this. She lives in Bakersfield, California, and she bought me this local radio station that did like the typical morning zoo type stuff,
Oh yeah.
But it was actually pretty funny. And this was from a while back, but they had the Mariah Carey dog whistle. And it was like a radio. And it had a clip from one of her records where she's really singing out there like, ah! 2 octaves higher. And then they had all these dogs going, arr, arr, arr. It's like, yeah, sort of the Mariah Carey dog whistle today. So,
but like someone talking about the Monkees, your favorite. Well, I mean, Mike Nesmith has always been one of my favorite artists because I mean, does he have a tremendous voice like that? No, but he has. I mean, his voice is so effective the way it is. I mean, it's a very it's straightforward, but it can be, very soft when it needs to be, it's got a little bit of that twang when it needs to. And, and of course, he's an incredible songwriter too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, again, it can be emotional, it can be funny. And, it just such a unique talent. And, you don't really see, and also a bit of a genre crossing kind of artist. I mean, yes, country rock, and he was kind of a pioneer in that, but the stuff he wrote for the Monkees was not always, it didn't really sound like that. I mean, really could span all different kind of genres, and you don't see artists like that very often.
And that's actually why I became a fan of both. Besides the sense of humor, you hit it on the head, is diversity, of sounds. It's one thing, that's one thing that people complain about, say Led Zeppelin. It's like, oh, the first 2 albums were great, no, the rest was crap. It's like, no, I like the later stuff because they expanded beyond just doing heavy metal forever. They had some humorous songs, they had some ballads, they had some straight up country, all sorts of different ideas and things. And it's like, yeah, you can pigeonhole them as a heavy metal band, but they're similar to Beatles. They just had long hair, and but they went all over the map. And they might have not have gone so contiguous. I mean, that's one thing I could say about both the Beatles and the Monkees. It's like their progression seemed like natural forward motion, whereas a group like I said, Led Zeppelin, kind of went all over the map. They're over here this time, and then this album they're over here, and this one over here.
Exactly.
But I still appreciate all of them because the willingness to not sound exactly the same on every single album.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, like Elvis Costello is another artist that I really admire for that. I mean, he will go in all different directions. I mean, he's recorded, a country album, a classical album, jazz album, did all of them work equally well? No, but he tried it, and some of them, one of the things he tried didn't work as tried it, and didn't, record album after album that just sounded the same. I mean,
Right.
you can get stuck in your comfort zone, and I don't think you grow as an artist doing that. And of course, the Monkees, I mean, really took a chance when they did Headquarters, which of course paid off big time. That's a great album. And of course, and Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn, Jones. I mean, that was even better.
Mhm.
So I mean, they took a big chance by getting away from the first two, which were more kind of traditional. I mean, they were great too, but more pop. I
Right.
mean that, and they're good pop. But finally saying we want to record our own stuff and getting a new producer and all that, but it paid off.
Yeah. Well, the good thing about those first two albums, at least they came out the way they did. Some people poo-poo it's like they had no control, but at least they had the foresight, Kirshner, whoever, to make it like a proper album of songs rather
Yeah.
than a TV soundtrack where they would have had little bits of dialogue from the show.
Yeah.
Kind of more, incidental music than actual rock and roll or pop songs or something like that. So that set the groundwork for Headquarters or Pisces. There wouldn't have been a Headquarters or Pisces if they had done that. And they probably wouldn't have had much chart action, and probably wouldn't be remembered now. It's like, oh, that was that TV rock group that did something way back when. Yeah, they certainly wouldn't be touring now.
Yeah, right. That's right. And then of course, I mean, to then do, record Head, which I love. I mean, it's to go completely, an opposite direction. And I love that album. I saw Peter, Mike, and Mickey when they toured. Oh gosh, must have been was that like 2013 or so when they toured?
That was the first time they got together.
Yeah,
somewhere 2018, I think.
Yeah, it was something like that, and they played a lot of the Head album, and I was in heaven because I just thought I'd never hear a lot of that stuff live. I mean, do I have to do it all over again and stuff like that? I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe they're playing this live, and I mean that took some courage to do those songs, back in the day, because those were pretty trippy, but something like the Porpoise song, and I mean, gorgeous. I mean, and I think people now appreciate those songs a lot more than when they first came out. I think now the movie I admit, because I love the series, but I admit I've never been able to get into the movie. But but I
I'm
love
the
the
opposite
soundtrack.
on that. I'll have to admit.
Really,
in fact, I was on one of the. I'll admit here, since people watching this may not know, is like there's a mutual friend of ours named Plastic EP from Australia. He does regular shows with celebrities and commentators like ourselves, usually about the Beatles or the Monkees or maybe some other things like Bay City Rollers or something like that. But in general, we're always spouting our 2 cents worth about everything. He did an episode, and I don't remember if you were on it, but it was the top 5 Monkee episodes.
No, I wasn't on that.
Okay. And if you read my books with Michael Ventrella or heard me talk on this podcast a few times, I said that I was not a Monkees fan when I was a kid. I thought they were annoying. I didn't think they were funny. And we're talking little kid, early 70s, 3, 4, 5 age. And I was a cartoon kid. So I it was live action. It's like, who wants to see this? I developed an appreciation for the music later, but it took me a really long while to warm up to the sitcom. And I was one of the few in the group on that particular show, saying the 5, that all my episodes that I love are on the second season. And I think it's a natural progression from the first season to the second season to the movie Head.
Right.
Like Frodis Caper is just one step, it's like, had they continued the series for a 3rd season rather than doing Head, the 3rd season would have been like Head. Probably wouldn't have canceled, but it's like it just was getting that direction where it's going to go progressively weirder because they were trying to test the limits of how far they could go with it. Obviously, Head was a little too far considering how they promoted it and how it kind of ultimately came out. But I love that movie. It was what kind of switched my mind to where I said, okay, I don't just have to like their music. I can like them as actors as well. So I kind of went it backwards on that. So now I can appreciate, then I started appreciating second season ones, and then I started appreciating first season ones. And so now I kind of like this. I like the show for what it is or what it was and stuff like that. But,
Yep. Wow, that's it. That is really interesting because I was into them from the opposite. Like I started first season, second season. I mean, this was out long after it first aired, but and then I didn't see Head until I don't know what. I think it was a little while that I until I saw, and then I was just first time I saw it was just like, what the hell is this?
And I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but
but
I
I
get
love
it.
the music.
I still like it, and it's probably because to me it's like the Monkees equivalent of Magical Mystery Tour. I mean, you don't have to like the movie itself, but it has some really good music in it.
The music is awesome.
So I mean, if you want to fast forward through the strange or dull parts, you can, and just watch the songs. That's fine.
Yeah, and probably I should go back and watch it. It's been years since I've seen it. Maybe at my more mature age, maybe I would appreciate it more.
I mean, to show you how much I wanted to see it in the theater, and I had never seen it in the theater, is I was one of the ones. I was still living in Northern California at the time, but still a drive to go to LA. No, wait, I was living in Oregon at the time. Take that back, I was. So it was a trek to go down to LA, but I did it anyway on the 50th anniversary in 2018. Mike and Mickey were there, and Andrew Sandoval, and a few other people, celebrities. Supposedly Tony Basil was there, but he didn't stand up.
Wow.
Henry Diltz was there, and he had a little film about showing his photographs that he put together.
Sure.
And Rodney Binghamheimer was there. Jerry Beck was there. I was
very
there.
Cool. Very cool.
Vic Damone's daughter was there.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Anyway, but it was a full house at the Egyptian Theater, and apparently Peter and Davey did the exact same thing for the 40th anniversary at the same theater 10 years before, but I didn't attend that one. But anyway, it was fun seeing it on the big screen with an audience. Of course, everybody was appreciative. I don't know. I guess there were some first timers because I think Andrew Sandoval asked, how many you've never seen this before? And quite a few people raised their hands.
Wow.
So I don't know what they thought afterwards. Like, get me out of here.
Or are you in for a treat?
Yeah, exactly. And Mickey afterwards, he says, did you like it? Can you explain it to me?
You explain it to me.
So, anyway.
Oh, that's
actually
great.
You can see their whole commentary. They did film it on YouTube, so if you look it up.
Really?
Yeah. The 50th anniversary of Head, Egyptian Theater LA, 2018 or something like that. I don't know how you search it, but yeah, it has the whole interview with Sandoval and Mike and Mickey. So
oh, cool. Oh, that's great.
Something else I was going to ask you. Well, let me ask you this though, kind of shifting gears a little bit, but it says on your website that you write for a number of different blogs. Do you still write for all those blogs? It says Blinded by Sound, something else, something new, Blog Critics, Cinema Centuries. Are you writing for all those at the same time?
No, no, I don't. I got to update that. No, I don't write for all of them. As I said, Blog Critics, I do not anymore. Something Else Reviews, I do. I used to write a regular column for them called Deep Beatles. I now write periodically. I write for that periodically. I had some family illness that I've been dealing with, so I now don't write quite as much for them, but I'm hoping to get back to regular writing for them in the very near future. But I write reviews for them, and I'll be working on this very soon. In fact, I do a column for them every year where I come up with for all the Beatle maniacs on your Christmas list. I come up with the best releases of the year. for for all the fans on your Christmas list, or for yourself. Let's put it. Let's be real. For all the box sets, the DVDs and books that came out for the year. So that'll be coming soon. So I write for them. I write for Cinema Centuries periodically, reviewing DVDs, and it's usually music related, documentaries, mainly documentaries, film, other kinds of films. And then Blinded by Sound it recently went down. So I don't, but I did write a soul column for them, Deep Soul, where I talked about tracks that are lesser, kind of lesser known soul tracks. But as I said, I'm planning in the near future to put together a compilation of the columns I wrote for them. So those should be coming soon. So yes, I'm planning to do a lot more writing very soon for something else for Boots. So yeah, but yeah, I started with Blog Critics, and I was music editor for them for a time, one of their music editors, and that's how I got my feet wet in writing online, and because that's kind of where where it's at, as they say these days, is writing. There's so many great music sites out there, and great rock journalism happening on these great sites like Ultimate Classic Rock and so many others. So that's where then I ventured into writing books.
And then you also mentioned, and I think you mentioned on Plastic Show too, that are you regularly on the Every Little Thing podcast, or just occasionally? What's the story on that?
No, I'm not on that. I co-host a video cast, and there's a podcast version of it called Talk More Talk.
Oh, that's right.
Talk More Talk.
I got the title wrong. Sorry.
Oh yeah. Oh, don't worry about it. Well, one of the hosts of Every Little Thing is one of the co-hosts.
That's what. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. So you're close. Yeah, it's Talk More Talk, a solo Beatles video cast, and I co-host it with Ken Michaels, and he is the host of Every Little Thing and many other shows. Tom Hunyadi, who is the co-host of Two Legs, which is a Paul McCartney centric podcast, and Joe Mayo, who is a very popular YouTuber who hosts his own channel called Mean Mr. Mayo. Get it? And it's we do this every other Monday. And we first broadcast live on our Facebook page. And then after the live broadcast, we upload it to our YouTube channel. And then the audio only version is on virtually any podcasting platform of your choice. I mean, Spotify, Amazon, whatever your choice is. And we cover mainly solo topics. I mean, we do cover Beatles periodically. I mean, yes, we talked about the Let It Be box set. We are going to talk about the Get Back film. That's a no-brainer. But mainly we talk about the solo years, like we've talked about Ringo. You talked about Ringo earlier. We talked about his albums. We do a series that we love to do, and our viewers seem to really enjoy, called Another Listen, where we'll take an album like, say, Ringo the Fourth, that was critically and commercially panned when it came out. And we'll say, all right, we're going to listen to it, 40 some years later. Did it deserve its initial, reaction? Or do you think it's gotten better with time? And so, and we invite our viewers, both whether they're watching us live or they're watching the replay, to join us and say, what do you think? And we try to bring in viewer comments during the broadcast. It's a lot of fun. We've been doing it since 2018, and we've just absolutely had a ball doing this show. And we're going to continue it as long we don't seem to run out of topics. So we're going to continue as long as we can.
Well, as long as they keep releasing things, it's certainly no end of topics right there.
That's right. Exactly. Yep. It doesn't seem to end.
So mentioning that, obviously the Get Back miniseries. What else are you looking forward in the next few months that you know about? Beatles
Well,
wise.
yeah, I mean that's the only one I know about for sure. There've been rumors that there may be another McCartney box set coming out in the near future. I hope so. What I would love to see would be Back to the Egg, the Wings. I love Back to the Egg. It took me a while. When I first heard it, many years ago when I first heard it, it was another one of those head scratcher kind of albums. But I now love it. I'd love to see one of the archive box sets on that. And that's been rumored for a while, so I'm hoping that might be one that's coming up soon. There's been a rumor too that it might be combined with like London Town, which that'd be fun.
Should, just to finish the Wings years.
Exactly. So I'm down with that. London Town, Back to the Egg combination.
Like, as
that's
much
fun.
as I liked the Flaming Pie, it's like, isn't that kind of recent? That's what I was thinking.
Exactly.
With it. It's like, do the older stuff first.
Yeah, that really needs the remastering. I mean, that they could really benefit from it. So I'm hoping that the rumors are true, but I don't know. I mean, that's and I doubt that will be released before the end of the year. Way too close to Let It Be and Get Back. I don't think he'd do it that soon. And of course the lyrics book.
I don't know. I don't know if you have greater access to Beatle related things just because you're in the know or in the industry or anything like that. But I mean, I could just ask you, and I mean, it's like, let's go through each Beatle, I guess. We'll start with Ringo since he put out the most recent thing. More EPs from him that we know about, or we don't know?
I don't know. Ken Michaels probably has better access than I do, but I wouldn't be surprised if he comes out either. Well, one of two things: either another EP, or there are rumors that he may put out an album next year, but with the tracks that have already come out on the two EPs, that it may come out as a full album.
I hope there's something new with it, though.
But I would hope so.
Just the 9 tracks and that's it. It's like,
exactly. So exactly.
And then George, will go for him next. Where are we with George's estate? I mean, I know Danny's doing a bunch of Dark Horse things now with Billy Idol and Joe Strummer, but
right.
Anything more with George that we know?
Not that I know of, because of course All Things Must Pass was the big the big project this year, and let's just say they haven't been the speediest about coming out.
So we might get Bangladesh in 5 years. Okay, got
it. So I mean, Bangladesh might be a candidate for the next one. I'm not sure, because of course I'd love to have box sets of I love George. The George Harrison album, 33 1/3. I would love to see those two get the box treatment, but I don't know.
I would love more of his videos. They've released a few of them.
That would be good
George
too.
Harrison. They didn't put the Blow Away video on there, and I used to love that one. I mean,
that's YouTube, a great one.
Where he's riding the little ducky or whatever, weird stuff like that.
Oh, it was fun. Yeah, he had some fun videos.
And I know there's always like this weird thinking about the Dark Horse tour from '74, but it's like,
that's
a proper release, please. It's like,
exactly.
Maybe we can get it by 2024. Crossing fingers.
And then of course there's that. I'm trying to remember. It was an album that came out that was some bootlegs, and it was Volume 1. And I can't remember the name of it now. I'm blanking out. And how many years ago was that? How about if we get Volume 2?
And that came out with Scorsese's thing too.
That I'd love a Volume 2. Where's
that one was like almost like Ringo's EPs. I mean, I think all the tracks together were less than 30 minutes. And it's like, this is on a CD. It's Volume 1. It's like it's gonna take forever to put this stuff out.
So I don't know if I could say with confidence, we're going to see something next year. I mean, I think the All Things Must Pass thing was so big that I don't know if but maybe 2024. She said something like that.
But, 50 years ago coming up is 2022. And as everyone knows, if you're a big Beatles fan, 1972 wasn't the biggest year for any of the Beatles.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, Back Off Boogaloo was probably the biggest hit of the year for any of them,
And,
which
you
is
know,
not saying
fun
it's a bad
song.
track,
I mean,
but I mean, it's
yeah,
just
great
because
track,
John and
but
Paul, I hate to say, put out like very interesting stuff, for lack of a better term,
yeah.
So, but you think that there would be like a Sometime in New York City deluxe edition or something, or is that like
now
shoved
that
under
has
the carpet because of that word and stuff like that?
yeah, that has been a rumor that Sometime in New York could be the next one.
Okay.
And yeah, that has been a persistent rumor. Yeah, I don't know. That's because that's a good question. There are some things on there that are not, shall we say, politically correct.
Or maybe a more positive note, maybe a proper Blu-ray reissue of the whole one-to-one concert and everything from that year,
Would that
with
be
everything,
that would be
including
great.
Yoko's tracks. I know people don't want Yoko's track, but I'd like the complete concert,
Sure, I would too.
And since
Absolutely.
they finally found it, I would love to have like the Jerry Lewis telethon footage and things like that on there too, so
I'd be down with any of that.
yeah,
Absolutely.
okay.
No, I'm with you on that. I'm wondering with Sometime in New York City. I mean, I would like to see that, for completist reasons, but we actually did another listen episode recently on Talk More Talk where we did that Sometime in New York City. And we had some very interesting responses. It's amazing how that album all these years later still evokes very mixed reactions. I mean, it was very, very interesting. So I'm wondering if they think, I wonder if Sean and the estate think it would, be a big seller to, would it be worth the big box treatment? I mean, Imagine was a no-brainer. I mean, and they did a beautiful job on that. I mean, that was well done. But I don't know. But that has been a rumor though that could be next. But I don't know. I wouldn't hold my breath. But who knows?
Paul's already done a Wildlife and a Red Rose Speedway, and probably wouldn't go back to it, to my knowledge, unless, which would be an interesting thing, if he put out a 72 Wings live album,
that would be cool.
I don't know,
Yep, that would be cool. I would, I'd be fine with that. I mean, that's that would be great. But yeah, things have been kind of quiet lately. Again, I think it's probably because of the whole Get Back hoopla. I think
I just keep thinking of things, and then of course it's going to be what's the decade here now? This is the 60th anniversary of Please Please Me. Coming up.
And then of course
and Love Me Do and all that stuff. And it's like, so
then there's of course the question of, will Giles Martin go back and remaster?
Or can he? I mean, I guess I guess he could put unreleased tracks and put them out on a proper release instead of these weird iTunes, throw out there for a copyright thing. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of unanswered questions here.
Or we could jump ahead a decade and do 40th anniversary of Tug of War,
Exactly.
40th anniversary of Somewhere in England, Stop and Smell the Roses.
Yeah, really. Oh my God. It goes on and on.
And then one thing I was going to ask you, because you're always, like I said, I don't know if I said at the top of the show or before, it's like we never really get a chance to talk when we're on Plastic Show, because we're usually saying our 2 cents worth about something and then we're moving on. And I think the last show you and I might have been on was the one with the best Beatle album of all time.
Oh yeah,
and you kind of were saying Revolver, but you never really gave your reasons. I mean, Revolver is a really good album. I was pushing White Album, of course, because I just do that, just to be contrary, but I actually, Revolver is my second favorite album, but I was wanting to have you give your due before we go. It's just kind of, in a nutshell, why is your Revolver your favorite Beatles album? I'd like to hear what you were going to say, but you never really had a chance on that.
Oh, well, thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, Revolver is such a groundbreaking album in so many ways. First of all, I mean, Tomorrow Never Knows may be my favorite Beatles song because to this day it just sounds like nothing else you've ever heard. Nothing, and to hear it on big speakers and to hear that incredible sound, the lyrics, the effects. I mean, it's just the looping that was, they were doing looping years before. I mean, it's became, I mean, today, using sound loops was, no big deal, but back when they were doing it, it was. It's just a profound piece of work. So you've got that. And then, you've got everything on there from, with Got to Get You Into My Life, you've got a Motown salute there.
Right.
And then, one of Paul's best ballads with Here, There, and Everywhere. You've got one of George's best, in my opinion, one of his best compositions. I mean, not the best, one of the best, Taxman. I mean, that's with that funky bass line, and so you have that, and it go, and Yellow Submarine. I mean, you've got Ringo gets the great song on there. It's just an album that really is a work of art. And even I know that's said about Sgt. Pepper, but I think Revolver is more timeless, even more timeless than Sgt. Pepper, and really shows like, okay, now the Beatles are in what I call Beatles 2.0, where they are now they're fully in the studio and experimenting. I don't mean drugs, but I mean in the studio, although they are experimenting that way too, but experimenting in sound. They were expanding boundaries of what pop music could be. And Revolver to me is just the epitome of that. And I love it.
I'll agree. And then I'll add, and you'll probably agree with this, I would suppose, is it's probably the Beatles at their most diplomatic. Because George gets the lead track and Ringo gets a number one hit out of it, or number two, depending on which chart you're looking at. But still, it's like, and George gets 3 tracks on it, which is unheard of before or after, except the White Album. But White Album's a double album, so that doesn't really count. And they also cut a couple of his tracks that could have made the final cut on that one. So sure. It almost seems like, like even on Abbey Road, even though they're trying to be more diplomatic, I think George was kind of like, all right, I'll toss you something, and here comes the sun. But I want to keep All Things Must Pass and all this other stuff for myself. So, he was done.
Give me just these two songs.
Whereas, at that time in '66, he was devoting his all, and his 3 tracks are like really diverse, as much as Lennon's 3 or 4 or 5 tracks, or however many he has on there, depending on if you're watching the US or listening to the US version or the UK version, which I assume you prefer the UK version.
Yes, I do.
Yes.
Yeah. As opposed to Rubber Soul, where I prefer the US version.
I prefer the US Rubber Soul too. Sorry guys. Brian Wilson was right.
Anyway. He was right. Absolutely. But that's a good point about George Harrison too, because even I Want to Tell You, I think is a great song with that dissonant piano that, as he's singing about trying to find the words to say. I mean, I talk about this in my book, Songs We Were Singing, that the piano, that sort of, kind of clumsily, gallops along. It's almost like, imitating the words trying to spill out. I mean, really clever, clever songwriting, clever song, and really showing, I mean, that George is so rapidly growing as a songwriter. I mean, there are just so many, great moments on there, and you're right. They're really on Revolver. They're really functioning as a unit on that record for sure. And you're right that after that, you
not so
know,
much.
it
Yeah,
gets a
because
little.
if Ringo's saying on Sergeant Pepper, I learned how to play chess,
Yeah.
and if George says, well, I came in to do Within You Without You and then I left, it's like,
Yeah,
well, that's not really group effort. I agree. And
exactly.
going back to George on Revolver, yeah, it's kind of interesting. I would say this, and I never thought about this before. It's almost like George did one each of Paul, John, and his own type of songs, just to kind of. So Taxman would be a Paul type song, saying, "Look, I can write a commercial hit if I want to. I want to tell you, it's more like a John sounding type song, at least kind of."
Yep.
And then Love You Too is, of course, George. Totally, like, this is me, it's like,
Yeah.
and I never really thought about that
track.
before until we're like talking about his stuff.
Yeah.
So.
And that's an incredible track too. I actually like that better than Within You Without You. I think Love You Too is just an amazing song, incredible lyrics. I mean, just I just think that's an amazing song. And again, you just really get these flashes of what an incredible songwriter he is becoming, and then would culminate in the Abbey Road, where he'd write two of the greatest tracks. And to think that we were just talking about this the other night, I think it was on Talk More Talk, that on Spotify, I think still the number one most streamed song, Beatles song on Spotify, is Here Comes the Sun, a George song. I mean, he really grew as a songwriter very quickly.
Yeah. Well, I don't have anything else at this point, but it was great talking with you. But give you one more chance, like I always do at the end of the show. Plug anything you like. Plug your books, hold them up, and everything like that.
Okay.
Or websites, or Beatlefan, or whatever you want, how people can get in contact you, and whatever projects you're working on. So
okay, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you again, Mark, for inviting me. This was a blast. I loved talking about all kinds of music with you. This was great. You can find me on Facebook. My writer page is Kiddo Tools Keynotes, so you can find me there. You can also find me on the Talk More Talk Facebook page. Just look under that. You can find us on YouTube as well, and on Twitter at Talk More Talk 1, the number 1. So you can find me there. The books that two of them we've talked about. This is Michael Jackson FAQ. There we go. Michael Jackson FAQ, All That's Left to Know About the King of Pop. So there's that one. This one, the Beatles book, Songs We Were Singing, Guided Tours to the Beatles' Lesser Known Tracks. They can both be found at Amazon. That's the easiest way to get them. So you can order your copy.
And you're listed as an EDD on there. I was going to ask you about that. What does that stand for?
That's educational doctorate.
Okay, so it's a difference in a PhD. Okay.
Yep, it's EDD is education. Yep, yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, in instructional technology.
Yeah.
So, yep. And then the latest one I have, this is, man, it keeps wanting to fade. There we go.
Yeah.
I got it like right there.
Yeah,
There we go. This is a book that I co-edited with Ken Womack. It came out last March, called Fandom and the Beatles, the act you've known for all these years. And it's a book, chapters written by different scholars from all different, mainly America and England. And it looks at fandom from all different generations, from first generation through today. And it looks at British tourism. I write a chapter in here about how technology has impacted fandom, like websites, streaming media, that kind of thing. So we really, and Mark Lapidus of Fest for Beatles Fans wrote the introduction. So if you're interested in really looking at how fandom has changed over time, and how fandom, how fans have helped kind of maintain the Beatles story, this is the book for you. You can also find this on Amazon. So those are the 3 books. you can check out. And as I said, you can also find me at Something Else Reviews. Whenever I put up a new article, I put it up on Facebook and Twitter and so forth. So just follow me on both those places, and you will know as soon as I put up an article.
Mhm. And any shows, any personal appearances in the next few months, or no?
Yes. And actually, the day after Thanksgiving, which is, let me double check the date, November 26th, I'm going to be signing books for the first time in 2 years. Thanks to, thanks to COVID and everything. I'm finally for the first time 2 years, I'm going to be signing books at Blue Village Vinyl, which is a record store near me. It's in Westmont, Illinois. They're having it's record store day, of course, in addition to Black Friday. And so I'm going to be signing books there. And
well, I was checking my calendar. I said, yeah, this will run before that date. So
yeah, well, okay, excellent. Okay, so
I have a calendar
yes,
up here. So
good. Okay. So yes, November 26th, I'm going to be signing books there at 1 o'clock, but they're going to be events going on there from like 10 to 6, I think it is. But I'll be there specifically at 1 o'clock signing books. So come on down, and my books make perfect Christmas gifts. So and I will sign it for you, and you get a free matching tote with it. So so come on down. And the next Talk More Talk will be, let me double check the exact date here. It will be Monday, November 22nd. And at 9 o'clock Eastern, 9 p.m. Eastern on our Facebook page. So you can join us then. And I think we're planning something special for Get Back. We're going to do some extra shows and all that. So I don't know all the details yet, but I'll let you guys know. Again, on the Talk More Talk page, on my page. So I'll let you know. But we'll be having a regular show on the 22nd.
Very cool.
And I think that's everything.
That's a lot. And when's the next Beatlefan coming out?
I think it. Well, let's see. Well, there's an issue out now, and I have my regular column in that.
I think I just got it about a week ago or so.
It came out recently. Then the next, let's see, because my due date for my column is November 30th. So probably. Better write that. And so, the next issue should probably be out by like mid-December, something like that. So be on the lookout for that.
All right, very good. Okay. Well, thank you, Kid O'Toole, for being my special guest today.
Thank you, Mark.
We can set up a time in the future to do it again.
Would love it anytime.
All right, I thank you very much. And again, this is Mark Arnold with another episode of Fun Ideas Podcast. We'll see you next time.